Welcome to the Garage Network podcast. Join us and the occasional special guest as we discuss everything automotive, from fixing cars as a technician, owning an automotive workshop or business, overall work-life balance, and even the occasional laugh.
Today on TGN Tech Talks, we have an AASRA catch-up with Rodger Nardi. Be sure to check it out.
So, Rodger, great to meet you. I've heard plenty about you. My name's Jeff. I'm one of the Garage Network people, and I think I joined AASRA the moment it was live as such. So I'm sure this will be an interesting and good learning conversation as well.
Sure.
I think, Mike, you joined AASRA at the same time.
Yeah. As soon as it was all live, we jumped on board, of course, to support the program. So welcome, Rodger. Rodger, you and I we met before back at ARCA. I think when you're on the ARCA committee, I think we was online. I don't think I actually met you in person though.
No, I was just going to say I did. There was something I was. Yeah, probably right. You're right. Yeah,
I think we were both on the ARCA committee. I think.
Yes.
Yeah, lovely to meet you and welcome.
Nice to meet you. Yeah.
Out of the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah, sorry, Rodger.
No.
Rodger, look, you probably can't see it, but I've got a few things for you here, mate. Obviously, you're wise enough to know what you're getting into, and no, it's nothing bad. But I guess the first thing to do is to introduce who you are, Rodger, and what you do, and a little bit about AASRA, because I think there's a lot of people that don't understand AASRA.
Sure.
Well, let's just do it. Let's just pull that band-aid off.
Yeah. So look, I obviously came on board at the really for the beginning of December with AASRA. My background was in diagnostics. I worked with Bosch in Australia and the US, and with SPX Service Solutions. So I've been around the equipment diagnostic software side. So in some ways, and I had been following this since the draft legislation. So I even though I've only been on board a short while, I feel like I've been consuming it for a period of time. Obviously, AASRA launched the 1st of July. The legislation became effective, but in reality, that was the starting gun for a lot of things to be done, both not only by AASRA, but car companies and the ACCC. So that made it awkward because people joined at the beginning, and of course, really a lot of things weren't put in place. The rules only came out, I think, 8 weeks before, so it really meant that a lot of things have really only come together December, January. So my condolences for those that joined early, because there really wasn't a lot there. There was no local support. We were using Donnie and some people in the States. There was a part-time lady in the evenings. So really I was the first full-time local employee. And that was the beginning of December. So, and then I've put on a lady to assist on tickets and whatever else, and we've revamped the website. So there's a lot been happening, a lot been sorting, but most of it's happened across December and January and February.
Yeah, Jeff. So I was going to say, Jeff and I were lucky enough, and we'll show it probably after this, is a video that we did with Donnie and a bit of a walkthrough on the website. And moving forward from that, we arranged with Donnie for you and Donnie to sit down with us and do another walkthrough in a few months' time when there's more things to show and more things happen. But Jeff, do you use more questions?
So I have got a few questions. I mean, look, I do think my personal view on the AASRA. Can I be really honest, Mike? I'm allowed. Yeah. Rodger, I think that they should have waited 6 months. Yes, they had the 1st of July happened. We had all this information, but technically we didn't, and in many cases went backwards, because a lot of people were used to getting information from various sources around the world, be it legal or not. That's how they've been operating, and literally overnight, everything switched off. Like Haynes Pro, Autodata, people removing EV data, you know, this sensitive information that we've had access to. And I think that one of the reasons why there's been quite a lot of kickback is there was no follow-up, there was no, this is what we were doing. It was like we'd all paid our $100, or I can't remember how much it was now, and some will have paid more for security and other things like that. But we heard nothing. Like, I've known people lodge missing information reports, and they heard nothing. And do you know what? I get there was a lack of staff, and I get there was a lack of back end. But when we and myself included, I paid my $100. I kind of feel like I may as well have put my $100 in the pub. At least I'd have got a headache over it. And I really think it was a bit of a fail not keeping members, or especially people that have paid, a bit of information on what's going on. And like within the first 2 minutes of us talking, you said, Rodger, that nothing really happened till December and January. Well, we're not hard up for $100, but we expect something for our money.
I understand, and I think because one of the things that, I agree with you, a lot of what you said. In some ways, in hindsight, the trouble was the legislation came in. AASRA had to be the legal scheme advisor.
Yeah.
But the back end of, working with NASTAF to adjust their software, even the financial side. I mean, why has the government kicked in $250,000? We're well over triple that now just in relation to the software. So there's obviously industry loans involved. So it sort of meant to a certain degree the board, and there's the 4 board organisations, had to take a somewhat cautious approach as far as they didn't want to employ staff and then not have the funds to pay them. So there was a period of time, I'm only going from what I'm told, period of time where it was like, how is this going to work? Chicken and egg. What do you do first? What do you do second? Since we're at this point now, and Donnie's just organising a complete dump of all the email contact details out of the system. So these are both existing accounts or people that are pending. In other words, they're partway through. And we're just, in fact, this happened this week. We're just organising what will be an e-newsletter, just a simple email. There'll just be some basic points of this is what's happening with AASRA now. We will do that consistently, not with relevant points. So, for instance, I've mainly concentrated initially on getting the car companies to get their offers in, and even though that was meant to happen basically the 1st of July, most of them, there's a lot of them that haven't. So I've been chasing them, particularly around diagnostics and scan tools, because that was a vague area in the legislation. If you read the clauses, there were some things in there that you couldn't do without a software or diagnostics, be it pass-through or scan tool. But that had to be clarified. So when I came on board, that was the first thing raised with the ACCC. They put out that document in December, but that meant that we had to get all that information from the car companies. At the moment now, I've got all bar, I think, half a dozen that have provided that, and some of them that have done it have made it annual, and we've gone back and said, look, this has got to be day, month, year. So that's where we're at the moment. So we're getting to finalise the scheme offer that those car companies have to give. And those that don't play ball, that I'm also at the point where there's some that I will be handing to the ACCC possibly at the end of this week. That just depends on where they're at and final answers. And, from our viewpoint, we're not, we're the scheme advisor. We're not the ones that have to provide legal advice on this, but we can only go with the information we've got in front of us.
I think that's a really important point. And I know this from a board perspective, that this is the first time that the government or the ACCC has ever made an ombudsman or a scheme advisor industry-based. Normally, these are funded by the government, and they are a government association. This is an instance where it's got to be funded for industry by industry, or by industry for industry. And I think part of that, yes, it probably wasn't a great idea to, ask everyone for $100 or $200 or whatever it might have been, without actually knowing what we were getting into. But I think part of that is us contributing to setting this up. And I think
but Mike, I understand you're on board, so I'm going to sit on a different shelf in this meeting that the three of us are having.
No, but I don't.
None of us. There's people that don't go to these meetings and don't speak to these people in the AAA and all these other automotive acronyms. There's people that go to work that want the data and they paid $100. And look, it was a very exciting time. People were thinking like they're going to be able to go to work on Monday and do Mazda software updates. That was the first brand that came into mind, and it was a massive fail. They'd all paid the money. They'd gone to work on the 2nd of July. Like, yes, I'm finally going to use my card app that's been gathering dust for 2 years. Look, and even now, was it 8 months on or whatever, we still can't.
No, Mazda's just on my list. No, I mean,
are we allowed to mention it? Sorry, I didn't mean to mention it.
No, you're right, because obviously with Mazda, it's a little bit different because you've got the original Ford Mazda thing. So you've got VCM and VCM2 that were both Ford and Mazda. So in some cases, you can look and say, well, Ford have got the same bit of hardware with software day, month, year, and yet Mazda don't. So I understand the angst there, and I've been back and forwards. That's one that is hopefully going to resolve. I'm hoping in weeks, because that's where we're at now.
But I'm just saying, without getting into specifics, I think there's got to be a little bit of. I mean, I've known a little bit more, Rodger, because I've been involved. I get feedback at a board level, and I've tried but I think that people need to understand what's happened. And it hasn't been 100. Look, we are where we are, and I don't think all of these other associations that are involved, which was everyone that's your boss essentially, your board at the end of the day of AASRA, whether it's the MTA or MTAA, the AAA, the VACC, everyone's associated and on that board, and they're all of it's not just one part of the industry that's pushing any sort of barrow. It's that everyone's involved, and they all made a conscious decision to go in this direction. And unfortunately, whether it is right or is wrong, I personally am worried about people. We missed that exciting opportunity to really to elevate this into the stratosphere, if that makes sense, because I think there was some real good excitement at the time, but things weren't there. So maybe that should have been paused and should have been launched once we had a little bit more information and a little bit of stuff. But I also understand that, well, you said it yourself, Rodger, you guys are in a hole of, the government's provided $250,000. It's cost $750,000 to create all of this. So someone's got to pay for this at the end of the day. Now the government's not paying for it, so they've put it back onto industry. So you've sort of got to have that, you've got to have that balance. So maybe every workshop and every member needs to contribute, and at the end of the day, your $100 was a contribution. But
we didn't. If it was a case of, guys, do you know what? We need help. We've got no staff. We've got none of this. If it was if we were spoken to as the automotive aftermarket industry, maybe would have gone, do you know what? I'll fling $500 there. Instead we were charged $99 or $90 plus GST. We weren't asked for help. It was, here's your access, pay your money, off you go.
True.
I think
that's exactly as it was.
Yeah. And look, I think the position, I can't go back on what's happened, so I can only go from the lot. I'm responsible from 1st of December on. But what happened, I don't think there was anything particularly deceptive in the whole thing. It just, nobody knew. Like at the last minute, I think the locksmiths were thrown into the mix. Yes. Well, nobody knew that was going to happen, and so consequently, all of a sudden, the software we needed to handle that was not meant to happen till the beginning of this year. So there's a lot of things and you had basically no workers, no AASRA workers. So you had people doing full-time jobs helping out from those organisations. So look, it wasn't ideal. And you're right, from a launch, we've been involved in scan tool launches. And I know, you want to get it right, because the problem becomes, If it's not right initially, then you've got to counteract what was the negative response, and you've got to be able to get over that hurdle of now it's positive. So this is why we want to start communicating. A lot of things are now working, but we've got to be able to communicate that to both existing people and then the general market. That's why we haven't started any promotion at all, because I said before we start promoting anything, we've got to make sure we can handle any volume coming in. Our tickets, which are the email things, I mean, just give you the stats between the last board meeting, because it's tomorrow. It's gone from open tickets, that's people that are sending in questions. You know, there was 127 open, you know, a month ago. This time now we're down to 55. So what it is those inquiries that are coming in now are now being cleared within a matter of hours, some minutes. So we're able to get on top of that. But also now we've improved the website and we've put navigation and help on there, how to sign up. We're not getting any emails saying, I'm halfway through signing up. How do I do this? How do I do this? Authy app. So we've solved a lot of that, and the actual accounts being opened each day are now over double than what they were early February. So, you know, we have ramped up, but it's not stretching us to do that, because I can put another staff member on as soon as I know we need the capacity.
Yeah.
You've just touched on my first TGN member question, and that is, what happens once a missing information report is lodged?
Now, I can only speak since I've been involved, because
that's fine, because that's where we are now. So
So what I've done is, you know, we in our ticketing system, which is where that gets lodged via. So we then tag it with the missing information report and the brand. The idea of that is that we'll be able, and we can extract and say, well, how many missing information reports have we got for this brand, and what percentage of the market are they? Is it disproportionate? But generally what happens now, I would have had I had two today, one related to Porsche and one related to Mazda, I think. So we have, you know, you can contact the car companies through that link on our website, but we have a separate set of people further up the chain that we contact. So I immediately contact. It's just a cut and paste, really. I say, this is the missing information report. How can you address it? Now, quite often, I'm going to say 8 out of 10 cases, it's not so much missing as much as they didn't know where to find it, particularly with the collision industry. So, but there is missing information reports that aren't solved yet. So Mazda diagnostics, where's the software, the IDS software? You know, I mentioned Porsche. Well, they have a virtual software which works but takes a very long time. So, you know, where is the actual PIWIS bit of hardware? So they're the things that are live that we're following up with the car companies. Quite often that involves us saying, you need to add this to your scheme offer. That's where I'm at with a number of them now.
I've actually heard very good things about Porsche. I've actually heard that they're happy to support pass-through devices, and they start to, you know, it might not be in all cases, but it's literally taken 2 weeks from start to finish to get set up with Porsche. But so well done to Porsche on that. But, you know, maybe somebody's having a Mike IT moment on there.
Oh no, there's two ways. Look, the car companies, different people took different approaches. Some people said, look, and some people, the more mature approach is that we want our product, being our car brand, serviced correctly, even if it's a 15-year-old car, because we want that driver experience to be that they'll come back and buy our brand again. So that seems to me to be the sensible way. A lot of the car companies have done the right things. I'm not saying all of them. And look, in some cases, they've tried to do workarounds. The example I gave at Porsche is really that they do have a software solution. The missing information report is it takes 25 minutes to scan the vehicle versus 5 minutes with the OE tool. So it's a time efficiency issue. So, you know, I'm hoping that'll be easily addressed.
Yeah, I know that, and I know we've also had, Jeff and I have had numerous conversations with guys, with some other of our friends in the UK, and who have said the same thing about various car manufacturers. At the end of the day, they make money out of this. So the easier they make our access, the easier it becomes for us to access this information, the more profitable this scheme will become for them at the end of the day. Because I
don't know if they may not see it that way, but you're right. Some of them make money out of this from day one, and others it'll take a bit of time.
So just moving on to, I really would like to just go across a few of the members' questions here. Now, I think this might have been solved, but I'm going to mention it to you anyway. And there's a mechanic that works at the dealers, and he's asking why he needs a photo proof of the owner's driving license and rego to get a key and a mobiliser code. And the reason why, as somebody asked him, why is that different to an independent mechanic? And that's because when they get a new vehicle, they code the keys to it daily. So they're doing key coding daily for new vehicles, maybe on a PDI. I'm not 100% sure. So is that something that's happened or that's been resolved?
But the requirements for an independent garage or a dealership, as far as documentation goes, there's no difference. The only difference that happens in some cases is a dealership may have a car that got a key code that doesn't have an owner. So there's things like that. But we do. So that's the same. We don't treat them differently. Bearing in mind that quite often it's the car company that then goes in and wants to make sure of that documentation. So there's nothing different there. We are actually, the documentation issue is being looked at the moment, probably more because of various breaches and hacks, whatever else. We want to make sure it's locked down tight. But predominantly on vehicle security, it's important because obviously you could, we'd get applications from other countries come in, and you get some applications that are dubious where when we look into it, we say, well, how can your workshop be in Sydney and your address is in Perth? And, you get all sorts of things so we've got to be careful, particularly around the security related thing. But it's just a matter of uploading the document. It doesn't take long.
So if even if it's a dealership and a brand new car that's just had the tape pulled off it, they've still got to go through the manufacturer's process of an unowned vehicle.
Yes, but there is, if you go, and Donnie may have covered this if you go through the security process, the software now, there's been a lot of change. That's the major changes we've just done. And a lot of that only rolled out, I'm going to say, 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And a lot of this process changed. So there's now 4 categories where they can choose which category they fit into, because there's other examples where it can be security related. There's no owner. It could be an auction, could be a wrecker. There can be different things where there isn't. So in that case, the dealership would upload an internal document, or it could be a work order or something. There may not. It's not as if there isn't a driver's license because there isn't an owner. There's still a way of getting the key code.
Yeah, I'd assume that was he's talking about why is it different between a car that the dealership owns to the question.
I don't think it is. No, I guess if you're doing programming keys or mobilizers to a car with no owner, you've got no information to send. But the guy did put it in. He did say he followed on a day later saying that he thinks it's been addressed.
Yeah, because there were the 4 options. Donnie gave us the walkthrough, and there's lots of different options in there now. In case you're a roadside guy or the car's owned by a fleet company, there are options to be able to get authorization to cut a key for a car that doesn't have an actual owner that would have a driver's license, where you couldn't do that.
So you just mentioned secondhand parts.
Parts.
If somebody was to use used parts, or you did, or was I dreaming?
No, it wasn't. Now you've been dreaming. No, it wasn't.
Okay. But it's my next question. So secondhand parts. So let's say you've gone to the breaker's yard and you bought a load of bits that might be VIN coded or something like that. Do we need to? I'm trying to find the question. I've got that many sheets of paper, and I'm trying to filter out stuff.
Well, I think for example, if you were buying a secondhand ECU and you wanted to put it into a car, look, we don't have the data, but that would be something where you'd have to. That would be a question directly for the car company. How do I put this ECU into this car?
I mean, look, in my experience, we don't want used parts.
Well, we don't. But at the end of the day, where we are with COVID at the moment and some of the things, if something's been encoded and we've bought it from a wrecker, and we wouldn't have a driver's license, but we would be able to pull the VIN out of the old, and we want to get the old PIN code to code it to a new car. That would be a scenario, Roger, that we probably need to look into at some point, or AASRA might need to look into at some point, where we would have to show a receipt from a wrecker from our secondhand parts register that we have. We have one of those in New South Wales. I don't know whether every other state does. But you would say that I've bought this ECU from a wrecker. Here's the VIN number. We can read the VIN out of the ECU. We need the PIN code for this ECU. And then you could code that to the car. That would be the scenario where we would, again, you'd have a VIN number, but you wouldn't know. You'd need to, it would be a situation where you'd need to prove where you got the part from.
Yeah, no, where you got it from, I know, because, yeah. And look, there is things I can't say I've seen. I do remember seeing one ticket about that recently to do with a Commodore wanting to put an ECU through it, and we.
I guess that the worry with that is as it's getting harder and harder to get modules and different things from overseas, or as productions ramp. Look, obviously, a lot of clock springs I found out are made in the Ukraine for VW. So a lot of these things are getting harder and harder and harder to get. Obviously, microchip shortages, problems getting stuff out of burnt down microchip factories in Japan that haven't been able to ramp up any production. So we've been hearing in the UK they've actually ramped up a lot of their training on ECU repair. And doing a lot of stuff like that and swapping chips and taking two modules and creating one good module out of that. So this might be something that as in the next couple of years we might come across. So
that's okay. I've got it down because it's a legitimate area. Just the fact that it hasn't, I can't say I've seen many tickets in relation to that, but it is something that potentially could become more prevalent. So I'd rather. I'll look into that and
that's fine.
Find out. Yeah,
Jeff.
So somebody said clearly you need more staff. Are you hiring?
Well, we just look. I did. I advertised. Well, first I had to personally get across. I wanted to know what is the workload. So I did all the tickets throughout December and into January, and then I advertised, and eventually put on Natasha, and she's from the collision repair industry and good on IT. But at the moment, yes, we can hire more, but I'm cognizant of the fact that when you hire someone, you've got to put them with Donnie for training. There's a fair bit of training involved initially, and then at the moment now we're on top of it. So but potentially we'll probably end up having another person on. I don't ever see a lot of staff because I think we get to the point where this is automated a lot, as you know, with things like Kia and PIN codes, where it's all now API automated. More car companies will accept our API, and then no one will be touching it. It'll just be a matter of somebody hitting submit and somebody getting the PIN code back a minute later. So that's sort of where we're headed. So at the moment now, if we need more staff, we will.
And I've heard of people having issues with trying to log in, and why can't some existing logins still be used? So obviously, I've got a feeling that somebody might have forgot a password or something, and they've tried to reapply with the same email address.
We've had people apply sometimes multiple times, so we end up with the same workshop.
I know why though, because was there a bit of a delay at first, Mike? Do you remember when AASRA first come? Was there a bit of a? Was it a while to get the email back or something like that?
I think it had. I think at that point, people didn't know how to use Authy, and then there was delay.
Yeah, I think there was something weird in the early days.
Hang on, Donnie was running it all out of the US. So I mean, I think it was all very. Even one of my I sent a ticket about Mazda in the early days, and that went to Donnie, and then it came back from Donnie and went to
So I'm just trying to filter out some questions because there's some.
Yeah, so look, I would just say, look, on login stuff, you know, if someone forgets their password, it's like any website, sitting below there is forget password. If you get a chance, just go onto the asra.com.au site now. I don't mean now. What I'm saying is that have a chance because it's totally changed. You'll find 4 buttons on the side. One's login, one's join, and one's joining help, and the other one's navigation help. And just behind those navigation and joining help, it's just a simple screen captures, a little bit of text saying step 1 through to 10 to join, and a couple of pitfalls are written in there so they don't, you know, get things wrong that we've learnt. And navigation just shows them what to do once they've joined. So far, since we've done that, we haven't got any tickets about joining.
Yeah, the other thing I think everyone should, if you were a member and you paid your money 6 months ago and you haven't been on for a while, go on and have a look because a lot of things have changed.
So I've got a gripe. So I went on recently. Sorry, Roger, you're getting another barrel now. I went on recently and I went into participating brands, I think it's called, or manufacturers info, and I'm like, brilliant. Like they've got BMW, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is awesome. You know, I'm there on my tablet, and I'm like, that's bloody fantastic. I can really see where the AASRA things come from now. And I went into non-participating brands, and there was nothing there. And I'm like, they've got them all. These guys have nailed it. That $100 was worth every cent.
You didn't notice that they're not.
Anyway, I then rubbed my eyes, and I noticed in some crap. I did have Donnie about this as well, but in some crap faint NPB, I'm like, why have you mixed the non-participating brands with the participating brands? I don't think it makes no sense. No,
that was me, because I said, look, for our average workshop, how are they meant to know if they go into and then participate? They don't know what you do, but they don't know what's participating, what's not. So I said, look, we just need all the brands together, and that's just automated websites, because they can just link through. So they're not going into one menu and saying, oh, they don't have Audi or they don't have whatever, not knowing it's in another menu. Because this was tickets where people would say about brands, and we'd say, well, it's a non-participating brand, you go over there. So we stuck them all together, and you're right, the watermark was there to make.
I guess the watermark for me, you know, it's just a bit. You know,
he should have gone to spec. I think
I should have gone to.
I think he should have gone to Specsavers. He needs a new set of glasses.
Look, I thought that was a backward step. I'm not the biggest IT guy, but I could work it out how it was, and then they moved it, and you know, people have probably been using the AASRA website for a little bit of time now, and they'll have done the same as me. Like, fucking hell, this new guy Roger, he's nailed it. No, Roger's nailed to a stake.
The other thing, just so you know, the other thing we're doing, and I had to go back to the VAG group, and I said, look, we can't expect workshops to know who owns who. You know, are they going to know to go to VAG for Bentley? You know, so I've said, look, can we use your logos? The answer was no. But so what we're doing is that automotive websites will now split out the brands, but it just means Audi will be written. It'll be on a tablet, you know, on the tablet format, but it'll just be the text Audi. So we'll put those brands so every brand is there, because it is confusing for people. They don't know that, you know, there's a lot of brands hidden behind the Volkswagen group. I mean, a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't. You know, where do you find Lamborghini, you know, for example? So, you know, so we are splitting that out a bit further. So at the end of the day, we'll have every brand listed. And look, I'll ask Donnie about the MP. Non-participating brands was a funny description in the first place, if you ask me. I mean, I've just tried to put text there saying, you know, you can go direct to these brands. You don't need to be an AASRA. But at the moment, we just wanted to make it a way where people could go to one spot for every brand and then click from there.
Are you going to remove the link to non-participating brands then?
No, that happened. You must have gone in. That was only there visible for about a day or two. What it is?
It had to be the day when I looked, didn't it?
So it was all moved into one, and they do that. They do that step in one software run, and then they make sure it all works, and then they remove it the second time. So no, we just did that for you, Jeff.
Yeah,
Just for
thanks
you.
for
Just
that.
Let's catch
just to
him.
confuse the pommy.
I'd maybe like to flick a member's details. He's 8 months and he's still not had his application yet. I'm not being rude. I'm not watching Coronation Street or EastEnders or whatever, the neighbours. I've got another laptop here, and I'm just going through some questions. New Zealand. Is there anything going to happen with New Zealand?
Well, no, I mean, unless they could pass legislation, but no, it's not. Obviously, and I have had inquiries from New Zealanders. It's sorry, but until you're willing to lose in the rugby, we're not willing to bring you into the scheme.
Roger's just made a lot of enemies there.
Oh, that's honest.
Whereabouts in Australia are you, Roger?
I think watch this space. I think there's a couple of associations. This is really, really poignant point for our Kiwi viewers or members or anything like that. Watch this space. There's some opportunities there, guys, for some of your industry associations. I've been hearing some feedback. There's some stuff coming out of NZ that you get behind them and help them, and they're going to lobby the government. So I think there's some.
Look, we'd like to see it, and also the other thing is that there has been some tentative discussions around the adjacent spaces. So down to motorcycle, up to medium heavy truck, into ag. So the basic platform, once we get it right, can be extended into those areas.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's right. Just to your point, Jeff, before about someone waiting 9 months, generally we've gone through, and Natasha, she's been going through all the older tickets. In most cases, it always is someone that has started an application, never finished it. We email and they've not put any documents up. They haven't put their address in, so we normally get these ones that are old. We can email them back and say, you need to complete this. There's no answer. So, there is a bunch like that. We will purge them out. But before we do that, we're making sure that we've made contact again. But look, in fairness, there was accounts applications that were months old. Yeah. So in December, when I looked at them, there was some in September that were waiting for. Normally, it wasn't that we had everything, but by the same token, we should be asking, but we had nobody to do the asking. So we've cleaned a lot of that up. So that still is being cleaned up. And quite often you've got people that have done an application, they've never paid, and it's sitting there dormant because we're sort of waiting for payment or documents and nothing's happened. So, we're now getting the bandwidth where we're backtracking, and this has been happening only really for the last couple of weeks. We're backtracking on those, contacting them and saying, do you want us to proceed? Do you want to proceed with this or not? We normally have to search the company name, and you often find they've already opened an account. Just they started one, stopped, and then started another one. Yeah. So, we've got about 1,000.
For people that have maybe lost passwords or, like I was talking to a guy, and he obviously wants to use his business email. It won't allow him to do so. Is there a way that he can contact somebody to have it reset?
Oh yeah, so that's just a matter of just hitting the support link button and it gets sorted out. Now look, the idea of it was with an email address. The only reason we said, look, it's not a good idea to use a business one was because if someone's getting information there and it gets lost amongst 150 other emails, then it doesn't work. But that's up to them. If it's a business that says, look, I want to use admin, and we've got them, admin at Joe Blogs Mechanical, that's fine. They just know that is the one that's linked to their phone. So the whole thing becomes, that's their account. That's up to them. And they can change that. We do get people that change, obviously, people change email addresses. You've got, technicians that have moved from one company to another. So they've got to change their details. Some people have to change their phone number. We've had that a number of times. It's just a matter of we've got to manually do it. There's no simple way because we've got to do some more checks. But no, that's not complex, any of that now.
Yeah. Just a case of hitting these. I did do an MAR once, and I never heard anything. Which was a little bit disappointing. But look, I do think that at the time you were setting new members up, so I kind of see why I didn't get a response. But So if somebody lodges an MAR now, do we get an automated response?
Not
or
automated.
do we get anything?
Yeah, so they're going to me. Generally speaking, MIRs, I would normally email back and say, okay, well, I'm going to be contacting the car company, whatever else, and I'll get back to you. The problem is that process can take a bit of time sometimes, but normally speaking, then I'll find them in the system because it sort of goes to my email as well, and then give them a result. So a lot of them have been, but a lot of them have been, when I say user error, and a lot of it relates to navigation within the OE sites. They can't find it, and we have asked the car companies for any navigation documents. They don't need to. That's not required for them, under the legislation, but it would help. And I'm saying, look, if you can help with that, it's going to save me work. It's going to save you work, because I'm now emailing you about something that neither of us needed to touch if they knew where to find it. So we have got a couple of them now that we're going to do some videos for, and we're going to link videos to some of these.
Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say that was a question that I think it was Gary O'Ryan had, and he was asking for Kia information, or is this information available here? And and I've done the same for a couple of manufacturers. You just have to spend your money to go in and have a look around, and then sort of go, oh, what I'm looking for isn't in here. I wonder where it is. And maybe I'm not in the right part of their website, or I haven't paid for the right sort of subscription. And I think that was, but I think that a lot of that's been resolved once with the walkthrough we did with Donnie early last week, Jeff. I think a lot of that's changed. I think people need to go and have a look.
I do agree, and it does sound. And I didn't want to be like AASRA bashing, Rodger. I just had to be honest, and I sit on a different side to how Mike does, and I see these different people every day, and I've heard mixed reviews on AASRA. I've also got my own opinion. It definitely sounds like they've got the right guy at the helm, being yourself. So look, I'll when I'm due for renewal, I'll give you my $100 and let's see what you can do with it. Can you? Okay. Well, I suppose talking on behalf of members and the automotive industry, we just want some feedback. We just want to know.
Well, that's the most important thing now for us. In reality, we've got people like yourselves that are coming up in the middle of the year or just after the new, and had a bad experience initially. What we want to be able to do is feed through just a regular. It'll be an email, just an e-news, single thing saying this is what's happened. This car company's been added. So there's a couple of new car companies coming on.
Who? Again, you can say we're all mates here.
I'm just trying to work out whether that's confidential or not.
No, it's not. You've already half told us now.
Yeah, look,
we're live on the Garage Network.
It's generally known, but it's the name of a fruit. But it's generally known. But also too, you'll find that things like when you say Kia, we didn't have, you have the support link button. So the first step is you can't find something, you need help, you click that, and then it goes straight to their person to deal with. That's the first step. Then a missing information report, or you contact us, and then we'll take it further up the field. The problem with Kia was there was no link there because we didn't actually have an email address until probably, I think it was late last week. So Donnie's setting that up now. So most of the car companies, there is a link. The problem we have, and what we don't have control of, is when somebody says missing information report, we say, have you asked them? They may say no, and we say, use that link, and then we don't hear any more about it. So we really don't know. Sometimes we'll email back and say, was it because?
But it's because they've paid you, not the manufacturer. Like, no, Rodger, it's your fault. You deal with it. You've took my money. And I get it. I understand.
Just the process is because bear in mind, we have no access into the OE sites, nor do we have any more information than anyone else. So we've, we don't have the answers, like as AASRA, because we can't go past our own website. And consequently, that's why the first time the question needs to be asked there, and then we'll take it up, because quite often the question may be something that is a very quick response would come back and solve it. A lot of people don't necessarily realise that. That's why we put the navigation document up there, so that people know, okay, so what do I do here? I go to this website and these are the buttons that are critical. So at the moment now, we've got to add to the diagnostic buttons a lot of the diagnostic stuff, what scan tool, what pass-through device, its pricing, software, day, month, year. So all that's in the throes of happening now.
Are the manufacturers going to, you're probably not going to be able to answer, but the J2534 over manufacturers' equipment, I've been on the waiting list since October for 6154. It was meant to come in January, then pushed back to March, and I think it's getting pushed back again. So there's no dealer interfaces or VCIs or whatever you want to call them. So
is that the VAS one? The VAS
yes.
154? Yeah, okay.
So obviously that's in very grey writing NPB, which is a non-participating brand. But for a participating brand like the company that we spoke about earlier, we can't use J2534 pass-through device. We have to use the dealer tool. Is anything going to change along those lines?
Well, we're recommending to the AAASRA that SAE J25, 2534 or ISO 22900, same thing, needs to become an Australian standard, because that's our issue at the moment.
Because that's designed for emissions, isn't it? J2534 is designed for emissions. It's not designed for. I mean, look, I have done it using a Bosch KTS. You'll be proud there, being an ex-Bosch guy. Hopefully still friends, but I've used a KTS to do some security related stuff. It's not quite perfect, but it's been enough. But I think at some point I'm going to come unstuck, replacing an ECU or a gearbox controller by not having that genuine interface, not seeing ignition sense and other bits of information that we can't see. So J2534, I don't think is going to cover that.
Now, bear in mind that there's J2534-1, which is your emission controllers. -2 covered the other controllers, but the whole box and dice is not a fully blown scan tool. It's for pass-through. Obviously, GM and Ford, there was a couple of players when that came out that said, well, let's go from the Tech 2 to the MDI, which is a J2534 device, but we'll use that as our complete scan tool interface. So there's a couple that did that rather than having a scan tool and a separate device. But we need a standard in Australia that will make that. So at the moment now, Kia, Hyundai, a lot of the Japanese brands, they don't have to comply with that for Australia, because there's no need to. They just say this is the scan tool, and they don't use it either. Because why would the dealer use two tools when they've got one they've got to have and they can use it for pass-through? Whereas, of course, those same brands in America have to provide a J2534 scan. So we just need the standard changed. But we ask, through the process, we asked each car company. We've got some that have chosen not to bring a device out from Europe. And that's a dispute at the moment, because if they have it overseas and they're choosing not to bring it out, that's just frustrating the scheme. So I've got one of those at the moment. So yeah. So
let's say I'm the manufacturer, and do you know what? If you want to, you can use our stuff. You've got to rent our tool. It's going to cost you $400 when you could probably get your customer to bring it to the dealership, and we'll charge them $150. So they're slapping our ass on loaning a laptop and a VCI. I know there's been complaints about this manufacturer, and I'm not going to mention them again.
There's only one manufacturing loaning them.
No, I didn't mention any names. I've already mentioned it. I'm not doing it again. What's going to go on there if they continue to push back? Is it just going to be, they've been naughty, they can go on the MIR list and we'll pass it to that email there? Is anything going to happen? Is somebody going to get their ass kicked, and are we going to be able to see it?
Yeah, okay. So I understand where you're coming from, and that's, because I've been dealing with some of the car companies, and I'm talking about asking for information at least half a dozen times. We create a document, we say, you've got to populate this, and we'll often even put there, this is what's going to go in here. We need the pricing. This is the price. And so I met with and bear in mind, the AAASRA, who are the police they're the people with the big stick. I met with them probably 3 weeks ago now, and in fact, tomorrow afternoon we've got another Teams meeting with them. So we're at the point where we're saying we need to refer some car companies to you. What is and they're still trying to make we've got an agreement we've got to strike in writing with them, even though that's in the legislation. We have to have a memorandum of understanding that we think we've worked through. So that'll be an agreement as to how this is work. What I'm after is the template of how do I say, for instance, and a lot of car companies we're talking, to quote it, 57 CA 6 and 7, which are the sort of two breaches of the clauses in the legislation which relate to this. I'm wanting to, in fact, I've got a couple prepared in a template form. I just need to know what the ACCC is. So I'm wanting to do some of those later this week. And that's
So
your to-do list Friday.
Right, so Roger, you're referencing parts of the legislation there that they're in breach of, yeah? That is 57.
Yeah, 57 CA 6 and 7. I think there might be 3 as well. So really this gets round two things. Offering it by day, month and year. That's one issue.
Yep.
And the scan tool itself, there's a couple of clauses that you cannot do without a scan tool. So that's sort of also in there. The loan program thing, that issue, I did address part of it because there was a paywall involved in that. I don't know if you ever went through it, but there was a paywall. So I did point out that that's also illegal and that's been pulled down apparently. But the idea of loaning tools, there's nothing in the legislation. They've just got to give us a price if someone wants to buy it. The problem becomes on diagnostics is that the moment now, if you bought all the diagnostics, you'd need a separate cupboard just to carry all the tough books you'd end up with. So this is where we try and separate the software from the hardware. And that's what we're working through.
Yeah.
So look, 8 months, I think we're 8 months in until the release of this. I'm surprised nothing has been put through to the ACCC already.
Well, because really, no, you're right, but bear in mind that nothing, the first meeting we had with the ACCC, you're right, in some ways I was surprised too when I came on board. But
I'm disappointed, to be honest. I thought as we're going to be getting on it.
Well, there was nobody
to do it.
Sorry, there was nobody to do it. So in reality, and we have to go through a process. So that meant we can't just say we're referring you. So in fairness, we say to the car company, this is what we need. We send them a document. Now, a lot of them just filled it out and sent it back. That's the case. So I'm not saying there's a lot of car companies that have, now some have got an IT issue where they say, we don't know how to break this up into day, month, year. And I say, well, go and see your IT department, but that's what you need to do.
Yeah, go make it somebody else's problem and come back to me when it's fixed. Yeah, I like it.
Because you can't, because at the end of the day, how I view this is if a car of a certain brand comes into your workshop, you can't have to sit down and make a decision and say, well, okay, I've got a pass-through box, so I can use that, but I've got to pay a year's subscription to get the software. Yeah. I can't charge that to this customer here. So then I've got to take a punt that I'm going to get my money back on that during the year. So that shouldn't be the decision someone has to make. The decision should be day, month, year. So they can say, I'm going to buy a day's worth of, it should be no different to saying I'm going to go online, I'm going to pay a day and I'm going to get a service manual, or I'm going to pay a day and get a downloaded software to do, reflash a TCM or something, That's how it's got to work. For some it does, but there's a group that doesn't. And I'm probably saying
so we've been talking a bit negative and who's been good to deal with on in your since you joined AASRA? What is there a manufacturer which you can think?
Oh,
do you know what they've go on, give us some good information.
Yeah, look, if you look at there's a number of them that got their ducks in a row very quickly. Yeah. Ford and GM were like that. So basically I think their scheme offers were all in and there was no dramas there. Even though there's some that are only offering annual subscription, it's just more, that issue was only raised. What I did was I got them to provide the information first in one because you're talking 50 odd brands. So I said, this is the scheme information we need. Now, after I got most of those in, then I started saying, well, that's only annual. Then I've had to go back and say, we need this broken down day, month, year. So there's a couple of them that are in that position now. I expect they'll do it because they've been supporting otherwise. So look, I'm going to say most of the car companies are doing the right thing. It's just that there's some that aren't. And there's some that are pushing back on all sorts of angles, and some of that relates to not bringing in a device in from overseas that's offered in the same scheme in Europe. And we're saying, well, that's available there, and saying you have to lease a tool for 12 months, that immediately eliminates most workshops out of that brand.
I know what brand you're talking about, and I'm not sure that's a completely bad thing, but anyway, look, maybe that's a non-recorded conversation.
And I know that tool as well, and I don't think it's actually a bad price to lease that for.
Because obviously I use Volkswagen, and every time I turn that tool, or even if I want some information, it's ka-ching. It costs me money every time I turn it on. You pay once, you cry once with the. I'm going to say the brand with Mercedes. You buy it once, it's $7,000 or something. Every time you can go and do, you could do not that you should do it, a special on your website or online, and do Mercedes software updates or whatever, half price, than the dealers. You don't have to pay. It's all included. All those updates are included. So it's actually not that bad.
The X-Entry is a tool, I agree, it's excellent, and it's a 12-month lease. My problem with that is that doesn't need to change.
Yeah,
because there's people that are Mercedes specialists that's not a problem, and so they and to their credit, they brought some of the stock in preparation for the scheme, so people got them. My only issue is then you've got people that aren't Mercedes specialists, or they're just all Euro, and that price is onerous for them. And bearing in mind that offer doesn't comply with the legislation. So in this case, all the fix for this is that the X-Entry pass-through device, which is reasonably well featured in Europe, doesn't do everything the X-Entry does, but does do a lot. That needs to come in. But of course, that also means that software can be used with a KTS 560, the same as a number of other brands. Yeah. So that becomes a solution for workshops that aren't specialists in a brand
at a much more achievable price bracket for your customer, which I think, and for the workshop. And I think that's the way we need to go. And I think that if J2534 1 or 2 or 2, for example, becomes an Australian standard, is there a way for them? And this is a really poignant question, and a question to take to the manufacturers. Is there a way for them to let us know what its limitations would be? Like, for example, you were using a J2534 and you're going to program something that it knows it's going to look for ignition sense. Is it going to give you a warning to say you can't do that?
Well, no, because it's already there, Mike. The manufacturers already have this. They'll have each portal. Like for example, Porsche, you can use and Toyota as well. You can use the Cardac. I don't know. We're not selling tools here, but the Cardac is an approved device. The Cardac Plus 3, which is the J2534-2 that you mentioned before, Roger.
Yeah.
Corrected me, but put me in my place.
No.
Sorry, mate. I missed the -2.
We need
I won't
to
do that again. ACCC will be on my case. It's there in the manufacturer's portal. So even Volkswagen say the Cardac Plus 3 is approved, but it doesn't know when the ignition is on, and you can end up in that circle of doom when it's wanting to see the ignition has been switched off. And let's say the manufacturers can say, yeah, do you know what? We're going to change it. It might take years for this change for J2534-2 to be the tool of choice, because how are we going to change hardware and software that will conform to So
it's actually -1 and 2, 1 being anything emission, 2 being non-emission. But if you look in the States, that pass-through device isn't just the only scan tool. It isn't, apart from GM and Ford, I'm not too familiar with the Chrysler solution, but GM and Ford, yes, you can use that one device and you just go onto the Delco or you go onto the Motorcraft site and everything's there. It's a scan tool as well as pass-through. But for a lot of the other brands, that's not the case. So in the States as well, in theory, if you're going to completely cover a brand, you need both the scan tool and their pass-through device.
Yeah, okay.
Well, in most cases, if you've got the full scan tool, you don't need the pass-through device.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we speak to a few people in the States, and it's odd. They've got lots of access to tools and information, and they still use your Asian scan tools and all data and things like that. You know, we could probably learn quite a bit from the States on how they operate, and the UK as well.
I had a stint over there from 2014 into 16, and it's a bit different there because the technician buys a scan tool. So, so that's part of the technician's kit or the mechanic's kit. And so, in one given decent size workshop, if you had 10 technicians, you've got 10 scan tools, not necessarily all the same brands. That's why their volume's so high. But you're right, most people still, as you would here, most of a whole hunk of your work's general service work. So you're just going to grab an aftermarket tool, be it a Bosch, be it an Autel, be it a Snap-on, whatever, connect it up, do the scan, search, etc. It's really only when you've got a problem car or you've got to change your controller or something, that's when you need something that's probably a bit better. Yeah.
Because even if we look at another German brand, like I've heard cases of even the dealers have problems when they're programming, but when you program a BMW, it wants to ping every module and see if it needs updating. And the more modules you update, the more chance you've got one of falling over. And some of your aftermarket scan tools can program an individual module, which probably has pros and cons as well. But even having the genuine stuff is always going to be a risk. Always a risk.
It's just a big investment for a workshop too. I probably I thought there'd be. Well, I know in Sydney there is. I know of one of the members that communicate with regularly, and they're buying progressively every scan tool, but they are servicing the collision industry with this. Yeah. So they're going on site but basically at the end of the day said, we're going to buy everyone. I mean, I don't know what the investment would be, but it's a lot. But apart from a circumstance like that, where you've got someone go way back to the early days of scan tools where nobody had them, and occasionally you could ring up someone and say, he was a mobile bloke that had some scan tools, had a Snap-on brick, and he had an OTC, and he come out to the shop and did it. So I thought that may evolve in Australia. There's remote access, of course. You could do that.
So that was going to be a question about how we do. There's a few remote people as well. Is remote's quite big around the world, but I've heard stories that we've got latency issues, which why it might not work in Australia. But how does it work with companies like Opus? And they're in Australia. If they're doing some programming with their tool, how does it work on the security side going via a third party?
Well, that's the issue they've got, and I know I've met with them and communicated with them, an email today. Look, they have to approach because of the nature of the sort of vehicles they're doing. They're often non-participating brands, so they're dealing direct with them. But some of those brands have come back legally and said, well, you don't fit the definition of an Australian repairer. And they could be right. So the problem becomes if you're going to remotely do something, it could be, I don't know, software upgrade to the ECU, for example, and you're going to do that remotely, and anything touches on security, well, then if you're remote, how do you know? Someone has to sign off and say, well, that is the owner's car, so the remote bit, now that could be done, but it would mean that the person in the workshop would have to be the one that is the VSP, in actual fact. Yeah. He'd have to be the VSP, and he'd have to say, I've got all the documents, and he's just then using him as a third party to go in and do the reflash for him. That's the only way I think that could work at the moment.
Yeah, I think I've actually, I don't know who you're talking to at Opus, but I suggested that to Richard and said, look, this is probably the only way it can work is the technician has to go and get you those, go in as the VSP, get you.
Yeah,
but then I'm not supposed to share that. I'm not supposed to share that with anyone. So then I'm going to be sharing those codes with Opus, or I need to go, or they would need to say, right at this point, put the codes in for us and we'll reflash the module. So it's
I as I mentioned, I met with Richard recently too. If Richard's listening, g'day. So look, I think because they're driving the scam, the laptop on site remotely through probably TeamViewer. Look, if you've got a car that's got pre-codes or something like that, you're gonna have to interact with it. But I think at the end of the day, if the workshop, the bloke that's got the customer's car physically there, he's the one that has to collect the data. He's the one responsible. If he gets it, because really, in some ways, it'd be no different to someone from Opus physically driving there and doing it versus doing it remotely. But that security side has to be. So really, the answer is that those people that have got the AutoLogic, they would have to, they need to have their credentials up to date to allow that.
There may be some loopholes as well, if it, I dare say, not completely illegal or dodgy, but maybe with the tool being on the premises of the workshop where the vehicle is, there might be a legal loophole there. Not that it's dodgy, but it's just another thing to consider for these guys and for these companies that are trying to fix cars over a phone.
Yeah, I don't think it's a legal issue as long as the workshop that's got the customer in front. So they've got the car, they have to validate that is their car, registration paper license, because, how do you know if someone stole the car and come in and said, I lost my keys, could you recode it? I'm just parked out front, just dropped them down the drain here. And you've got to validate that they're the owner. Now, if someone was coming in remotely to do that, as long as the workshop at the end of the day, the one that's signing off on this is the one that, if the police had to tap someone on the shoulder, that's where they're going to go.
In saying that, would that be the same as me contracting to a locksmith? If I've got all the details, but in that case, the locksmith, he doesn't fit the definition of a mechanical workshop. He's a mobile workshop in Australia. So if you're a locksmith, he'd be very similar. I could get all of the details for the customer, and I'm contracting him to code the car or code the keys and cut the keys for me. It's a very similar situation.
Locksmiths are included in this, so we would have X amount of locksmiths that are VSPs. So locksmiths should be an AASRA member, and they should have security status. That's really how that works. So yes, they are. They were particularly caught up in the whole thing because nobody knew they existed, in a sense. They weren't, their industry body wasn't, if I understand correctly, wasn't engaged with this process. So the whole legislation went through, and then of course somebody said, what about locksmiths? And then of course, that was when AASRA said, well, we'll have it done by the middle of this year. And of course, the car company said, oh no, the legislation's out, it's got to happen now. So that's where they particularly took a beating.
Oh no, they were very vocal about it on a lot of our social media sites. About all of a sudden they couldn't get access anymore.
And I tell you what, it's good to have a good locksmith. Do you know what I mean? They do some crap. Like I've done some Ford tumblers in the past, and it's not for me. I'd rather the locksmiths keep happy, and if they need some information, let them have it. If they've got a legitimate company, don't make it harder for them.
No, but that was what happened. Everyone goes, I used to ring the service advisor I knew at my local Holden dealer, and he used to get it over the phone. Now he needs a license and a set of rego papers so he can do it. And it's like, this is crap.
Hang on a minute. Did Holden not go tits up even before AASRA? Holden had a problem, didn't he? Holden had an issue 2018, 2019 or something like that.
When they left Australia, all the VINs disappeared. And I think now we noticed on Donnie's walkthrough on the Holden site, Roger, there's a what is it? It's legacy, Holden legacy information.
There is.
That's there now. So that we've been able to, thanks to AASRA, you've been able to get access back to that information.
Yeah, and with the locksmiths, the other thing that's a bone of contention for them, and again, we're stuck. We can't. It's not our decision, and that's some of them in different states have their own statewide security license. And so when they apply for the vehicle security thing, they upload this statewide security license. Now, we probably know that that's fine. We've got no problems, but we're stuck because the legislation doesn't cover that. The legislation says there has to be a police check and has to be done every 2 years. So we're having to go back to these people and say, sorry, you need to give us a police check. Now, if there can be rule changes at some point, that may happen, but the problem we have with the statewide registration is we have to look at the offences on the police report. So we don't see that if it's just a security license.
Yeah.
So that's where we don't know what's behind the security license, and the legislation doesn't cover it.
Actually, that was a question. Someone did ask me that in the early days, and I didn't know how to answer it because I have a pretty clean criminal record. But someone said, does it matter what you've been charged with on your police check as to whether you get access to AASRA information, or if you've got a criminal record, are you just out? Or if you've got a criminal record for I'm
surprised, Mike. I'm looking at you. I thought you'd have a long rap sheet, but there you go.
No, Mike was a good criminal. He never got caught.
Never got caught. Okay, fair enough. No, look, it really is around those areas of car theft or car parts theft.
Okay.
And look, there can be some more serious convictions that get to go to the issue of honesty and deception. And we've only had one of those that we've had to then, and we paid for legal advice because we didn't know. We thought, well, how does that work? It's in the legislation, honesty, deception, but it doesn't define it. So we got legal advice and said, sorry, you can't. So someone that's got a conviction in those areas, unfortunately, it might be 25 years ago, we can't put them on as a security person.
Yeah, no, so someone asked me if they had firearm offences, and I went, I really don't want to know why you've got firearm offences. That's
as long as it wasn't a drive-by, if it's, you'll be all right.
Car firearm offences,
look at, so I'm gonna moving forwards, Roger, I'd like to maybe speak with you again in a not so distant future and do a similar thing, and let's see on, I'm not going to say the improvements, but have a bit of a catch up, maybe some improvements on AASRA and moving forwards, and just so not just the Garage Network members, but whoever sees this video can see what AASRA are doing on behalf of being the ombudsman, so to speak, and of the automotive industry. We need what you've got and what you can do, and we just it's a shame we've not got it like we have now 6 months ago. It's a shame we've not got you.
I know what you're saying.
I've thrown some questions at you. You've asked everything. There's probably 1,000,001 questions that I should have asked, which I haven't, but I don't want you to feel like you're being attacked. Excuse me. But as I say, I'd like to just touch on this, and in maybe 6 weeks we'll have a similar thing. I'll have a half an hour. We've done the mean bit now. We've broke the ice.
And I'm, as I said, we're at the point now where, and I'm only just at the point now where I'm happy with where the inquiries are at, and our ability to process this, and also at the moment now the ability to bring accounts on. So accounts are quite often getting approved within a couple of days, whereas before it was weeks, and sometimes longer. So we got that, and if we then find we start getting that dropping off, I'll put someone else on. But we are moving to the stage now where we want to communicate, and that means e-newsers, that's updates. So in theory, if that car company that represents a small round stone comes on board, well then, that sort of thing.
I can't think of this brand. I can only think of one brand, and it better not be bloody Cherry.
Anyhow, when that brand comes on board,
I'm out. I'm
done. When that brand comes on board, but I mean things like that where there's changes. I think I recently approached Mahindra because they're not in the scheme. So at times we suddenly find out there's a car company out there that we didn't know about, So we will make sure
if you was to do the and look, Mazda loves Mike loves to talk about. I don't know why I said that. You love to talk about car park data, Mike. What is your probably top 3 brands? I bet you one of them is Mazda. I think Mazda's one of the biggest selling cars in Australia, isn't it?
Well, look again. I do have access to it, but don't often admit. Obviously, we all know Toyota's number one. This is in total registrations, and you sort of almost, for your customer, for your members, really, what you'd really want to know is based on registrations from a car that's let's say 5 years old and older. What are the top brands in that bracket? Now, I know some of your members are going to be doing, brand new or 3 years old, whatever. But if you pick that bracket, you're right. Mazda's going to be certainly. You're going to have Toyota, Mazda, Hyundai. These are some of the big brands now, key, but they're sort of, unless I'm missing someone obvious, I wouldn't think Mitsubishi would be in there. Subaru definitely wouldn't. But you're right, Mazda are one of the key ones and a big one. So that's why that's a focus. Yeah.
Well, look, I feel quite happy, and I'm certainly glad I spoke to you. You put a few things in place. I know you and Mike have already had lunches or whatever.
Well, here we go. Don't we haven't
No, we haven't. We haven't.
Don't worry. Us bottom feeders.
Roger, are you coming up to AASRA?
We'll just lick the shit off your shoe, Mike. Don't worry.
Sorry, where did you say? Am I coming where?
Are you going to come up to? Is anyone from AASRA going to come up to AutoCare? The AutoCare.
Oh yeah. I'll be. Yeah. So at the moment now, I'm in the throes of organising just promotional material. Apart from the e-news, we need brochures. We pull up banners. Now I've already got a 9x9, a 9 square, 3x3 booth booked. It'll just be me. I'll go up there, and then the AAA will cover me when I do a couple of the speaking things. But those sort of events will have to be at all of them, because I know even speaking with workshops generally, there's a lot that have no idea about AASRA right to repair, and they probably don't often get the basic reason that the cars are coming into their workshop now have got more technology on them, and also it becomes efficiency. You could spend a long time solving a car where you may be better paying $20 and using a bit of OE software or an OE manual and solving it that way. So, But I'll be attending all those things. Yeah.
We'll be up at, we'll see you at AutoCare. We've got a Garage Network drinks on the Saturday night, so we'll see if we can get you to the drinks with us.
Fair enough. Okay.
To have a beer with us.
Yeah, fair enough.
So are we all okay to maybe just have a touch base, and if a month or 2, 6 weeks or whatever, and we'll maybe run over a few more things.
We might do that one with Donnie, if that's okay. We'll just have a bit of if Donnie's still working with AASRA. I'm sure.
No, Donnie will be. He'll be there for a while. So what we're doing, or what we've done, is we've moved the support part of AASRA back to Australia with Australian staff, puts it into our time zone. So at the moment now, with Router working in the evenings, we do cover from across Australia. So we cover the business hours across Australia. But the irony of this before is, of course, these people were in the States working through when we're asleep. So, we weren't really having any daytime live activity. So so Donnie and Lyle on that will be focused on the software and the ongoing development of that. That'll be the main software. The website resides over there because of the complexity of the software coding in the back of it. But I am also working direct with the coder that looks after that, just to try and keep making tweaks to it. Yeah.
Can you? Okay. You've tweaked that tab off for me, so I'm happy. I was meant to jump onto AASRA before we went online, but I just didn't get the time.
Jeff, we'll keep promoting the fact that we'll get your watermarks a bit clearer to see. That's okay.
Yeah, that's right, and that might be maybe it's time for a magnifying glass. I'm not sure.
I've heard that before, but well, look, nice to meet you for the first time, and thanks for the for offending me at the same time, Roger. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
If Roger wasn't offended by you, I'm sure you're not offended by Roger.
No. There is an explanation, obviously, about non-participating brand, but you are right that the watermark is light. Because the main thing I wanted to communicate with people was if they're looking on the site for the first time and all they worked on was Volkswagen, well, they may say, well, gee, I don't need to join AASRA. And I'd rather them know that up front. So that's why I prefer that to be marked a bit. And I have made a note to, to see if we can get a bit of a stronger texture out and mark them.
Yeah, thank you. This was, I mean, I don't know what you're laughing at, Mike. You're blind as a bloody bat.
That's right. I can see you. That's like, I can see the watermark. That's not a problem. I've got maybe it's my new prescription. I can see okay again. That's all right. When I can find them, I just keep losing them.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a Specsavers thing. Fair enough.
Look, it's been more than once have I walked into Mark's workshop. He's like, I can't find my glasses, and they've grown. He's buying more and more, and he's got 2 on his toolbox, a couple of pairs in the office, some downstairs. It's because you can never find the bloody things.
Yeah, I know what it's like.
Yeah, thanks, mate. All right,
Right, gents. Well, I really appreciate it, Rodger, and really nice to meet you, and thank you on behalf of all the Garage Network and other network members that'll see this video. I think you've shone a bit of a light there. I think there's still a bit to do, but I think you might be kicking some goals.
Plenty to do. But thanks for the opportunity.
It's really good that I think you've kicked a lot of goals in the 2 months or 2.5 months you've been there, or 3 months. What's it been? 3-4 months.
We just need to make up for last year, Rodger. So no offense. No. Sorry.
No, I know what you're saying. That's why when I first came on board, I thought we're not going to promote AASRA until we've got these ducks in a row. And now we're at that point we can, and then we just have to watch, that we're keeping on top of the workload. But at the same time, the more car companies we settle their scheme offers on, the less emails. So what we're doing is progressively reducing the inquiries by putting information on the website. But then as we get scheme advisors in, the right information in, then we're eliminating that as well. Then we'll get to the point where the missing information reports that we can track by the time. See, there's in the legislation, there's a whole thing about answering within a certain time frame, 12, 24 hours, whatever. Well, we've not had the bandwidth to even look at that, but that's the point we'll get to. And I think on the software that Donnie's doing, it's now in there, so we can flag things when it takes too long, and that'll be the point we'll get to. Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that clears everything up for a lot of our members, and thanks, Rodger, for your time. We'll come back again in a month or so and revisit again, see what's changed.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
No, thanks again, Rodger, and I'll be nice to you in Brisbane at Autocar.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks a lot. See you then. Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Bye.
See you later.
Don't forget to join our private Facebook page if you are an automotive technician, and also subscribe to our YouTube and our podcast channel. They are all called The Garage Network. Thanks, guys, and see you next time.